Hey guys, welcome back tonight. I want you to close your eyes. Picture a scene. A soft autumn rain begins to fall, tapping gently on the world. You duck your head and slip inside a massive Celtic roundhouse. The thatch roof, several feet thick, silences the rain, turning it into a muted, comforting drumbeat. In the center of the vast, circular space, a peat fire glows. No roaring flames. Just a deep, pulsing heart of embers, radiating a soft, gentle warmth and a unique, earthy aroma. You sit on a pile of dry hay, a bundle of freshly shorn sheep's wool in your hands. You're spinning thread with a simple wooden spindle, your fingers expertly twisting the coarse, greasy fibers. The spindle whirls in the air, a tiny hypnotic whisper. In this round space, with no sharp corners, this ancient, repetitive work fills you with a sense of profound, ancestral peace. It sounds lovely, doesn't it? A kind of rustic, pre-industrial. You get the earthy smells, the gentle sounds, the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands. A connection to the earth, a connection to your ancestors. Let's be very, very clear about this. That's the feeling of a nervous system that has finally, blessedly run out of adrenaline after a lifetime of low-grade terror and grinding misery. What you're interpreting as tranquility is, in fact, the quiet hum of utter resignation. Let's try this again. Congratulations. The year is 55, and the first thing you notice is not the peace. It's the smell. You duck under the hide flap that serves as a door, and the air hits you like a physical blow. It's not air, it's a thick, wet, protein-heavy fog. This is the acrid, oily reek of smouldering peat, a smell that clings to the back of your throat like a layer of grease. It's the smell of burning dirt, because that's precisely what it is. Beneath the smoke, you have the rich, pungent aroma of unwashed humanity. Dozens of your closest relatives, none of whom have ever met a bar of soap, are packed in here. Their sweat, their breath, their skin oils have saturated the very air. The walls, the thatch, it smells like the inside of a giant's unwashed sock. Then you get the bass notes. The sharp ammonia tang of urine from the baby in the corner, and the deeper, earthier smell of manure. Because, of course, the animals live in here with you. The prize cow, the 2 goats, a few chickens scratching in the dirt. They're all part of this open concept living arrangement. This isn't a home from the smoke. You try to take a shallow breath, but it's like inhaling a blanket. Look up, you see nothing. There's no chimney. The smoke from the central fire is supposed to find its own way out through a hole in the roof, but that's a very optimistic and frankly inefficient exit strategy. Most of it prefers to stay right here, at that gentle. This is the premium air quality package for the Iron Age. Your lungs are getting a deep exfoliating treatment with every breath, from the inside. Let's talk about that fire, the one with the gentle glowing embers. It's a peat fire for a reason. Wood is labor. It has to be chopped, seasoned, and hauled. Peat, you just dig it out of the bog. Let it dry into hard brown bricks of concentrated misery, and then set it to smoulder. The good news is, it burns for a very long time. The bad news is, it produces very little light and even less heat. The warmth it radiates is a lie. It's a suggestion of warmth. It's enough to keep you from freezing solid overnight. The center of the room, near the fire, is merely cool. The edges of the room are functionally arctic. You're sitting on what you thought was hay. It's not. A cold wetness is already seeping through your wool tunic, chilling the base of your spine. There is no memory foam. There is no lumbar support. There is only the cold, unforgiving earth. Look around. Your eyes are adjusting to the gloom. The interior of the roundhouse is a vortex of shadows and shifting shapes. There are no rooms. There are no walls. Privacy is a concept that hasn't been invented yet. It is the ultimate open-plan living space. A 30-foot diameter studio apartment, shared with 20 of your family members and their associated livestock. Over there, your grandmother is hacking up something that sounds solid into a pottery bowl. Your uncle is sharpening a spearhead. The scrape of stone on iron setting your teeth on edge. Two of your cousins are arguing in a dialect so thick and guttural, it sounds like they're trying to gargle gravel. A baby is crying, a thin, reedy wail that promises to continue for the next 6 hours. This is the soundtrack to your life. There is no escape. You cannot go to your room and close the door because you do not have a room. And doors are a luxury for chieftains. And now, your task, the wool. You hold a clump of it in your hand. The prompt called it freshly shorn. That is a very polite way of saying it was hacked off a terrified, struggling sheep about an hour ago with a pair of crude iron shears. It is a matted, tangled mess, thick with a greasy yellow substance. That's lanolin. Dotted throughout the wool are other little surprises. Burrs, twigs, specks of dried dung, the occasional dead insect. Your job is to tease these fibers apart with one hand while twisting them into a crude thread with the other, using the drop spindle. Let's focus on that spindle. It's a simple tool, a stick with a weighted wall at the bottom. You give it a twist, and it spins. It's the sound of your own life being twisted into twine. Whoosh! There goes a second. Whoosh! There goes another. This is your function. This thread will become a tunic you will wear without washing until it literally disintegrates off your body. Its replacement will be made using this exact same process. This is your career, your hobby, and your retirement plan, all rolled into one greasy, repetitive motion. The skin around your nails is raw. You have a splinter under your thumbnail that has been throbbing for 3 days. The repetitive motion has created a dull, persistent ache that starts in your wrist and travels all the way up to your shoulder. This is the Iron Age equivalent of carpal tunnel syndrome. There is no physical therapist. There is no anti-inflammatory medication. There is only the endless pile of greasy wool waiting for you. So you sit there, twisting, spinning. The spindle drops, whirls, slows. You catch it, and again and again. The rain drums its muffled rhythm on the roof. The fire sputters, releasing another puff of eye, watering smoke. Over the fire, in a large clay pot, is a bubbling greyish sludge. It is pottage, a kind of perpetual stew. It's made of boiled grains, spelt barley, a few sad-looking root vegetables that were pulled from the cold earth this morning, and whatever else could be found. A handful of wilted greens, a few acorns. If you are very, very lucky, there might be a piece of gristle in it from a bone someone was boiling for the 3rd time. It has the consistency of wallpaper paste and the flavour of boiled dirt. This is not food for pleasure. This is fuel. It is the minimum number of calories required to ensure you can wake up tomorrow and perform more repetitive labour. Everyone looks older than they are. The 30-year. Their faces are smudged with soot. Their hair is lank and greasy. Let's talk about their teeth, or what's left of them. The coarse grain in your diet, often contaminated with tiny particles of stone from the grinding quern, has worn their teeth down to flattened, yellowed stumps. Abscesses are common. His options are to either live with the agonizing pain or have the tooth knocked out with a rock. Customer service in Iron Age dentistry is notoriously poor. And the children, they aren't the rosy-cheeked, laughing cherubs of historical fiction. They are small, serious creatures with watchful eyes. They are covered in a fine layer of grime. Many of them have the telltale signs of malnutrition, the slightly distended bellies, the thin limbs. They are quiet. They will be taken by disease, by infection, by a simple fever that your 21st century immune system would shrug off in an afternoon. That crying baby, its odds are, statistically speaking, not great. This is the reality of your peaceful existence. It is a life lived on the absolute knife edge of survival. The rain isn't a cozy soundtrack. It is a threat. Too much rain, and the crops fail. The grain's not a metaphorical. The forest outside isn't a beautiful wilderness for hiking, of all tribes, wolves, and things you don't have names for. That supposed deep-seated peace brought on by your ancient, repetitive labour. Let's analyse it. What you are feeling is not serenity. It is the absence of immediate panic. The rain means you are not currently being raided by the Trinovantes from the east. The fire means you are not currently freezing to death. The bubbling pot of grey sludge means you are not currently starving. The fact that you are spinning wool means you are not currently sick and dying from an infected wound. You are in a holding pattern. This is the tranquility of a battery hen between feedings. It's the calm of having absolutely no other choice. What are you going to do? Complain to management? Write a bad review on Yelp? Roundhouse ambience is a bit smoky, and the neighbours are constantly coughing 0 stars. You are a cog in a machine, and the machine's only purpose is to keep turning. You spin the wool to make the clothes to keep you warm enough to plant the crops, to make the food to give you enough energy to spin more wool. It is a perfect, miserable circle. The spindle drops to the end of its thread for a single blessed moment. The tiny whoosh stops. The silence it leaves behind is profound. The wet, ragged breathing of your grandfather, the low moan of the wind as it whips around the wattle, and daub walls, a reminder of the vast indifferent darkness that surrounds your tiny smoky bubble of existence. A flicker of something, but it's not peace. It's a dull, aching exhaustion, so profound it feels like a part of your own skeleton. It's the crushing heavyweight certainty that this is it. This is the whole deal. Tomorrow will be exactly like today, and the day after that. A long, unbroken chain of damp, smoky, laborious days, until one of them, for one reason or another, is your last. You reach down, catch the spindle before it touches the ground. You wind the thread. You pull a new tuft of greasy wool from the pile. You give the spindle a sharp twist. Whoosh. The sound starts again. A tiny, regular whisper. The sound of time itself being spun into a fragile, dirty thread, and you feel a wave of something wash over you. It's a kind of calm, I suppose. The calm of a river stone. You are not at peace. You are simply worn down. There is a certain peace in this, isn't there? This ancient, repetitive motion, the soft whir of the spindle, the gentle heat of the peat fire, the muffled drum of rain on the thick thatch. It's the picture, a rustic, idle, the kind of thing people pay a lot of money to experience for a weekend in a glamping yurt with Wi-Fi and underfloor heating. Let's hold that thought. Hold it tight. And now, let's feel what you're actually feeling. Your fingers are coated in a thick, greasy film of lanolin. It smells, quite specifically, like a damp, unwashed sheep that has spent its entire life lying in its own filth. It's a powerful, musky animal smell, and it's now all over your hands, under your fingernails, and it will be there tomorrow, and the day after. Woven into the grease are tiny bits of dried mud, burrs, fragments of bracken, and a few things that are probably tiny specks of dung. Each time you draw out a thread, you feel the gritty texture of the real world rubbing against your calloused fingertips. You pull out a small, sharp thorn and flick it into the rushes on the floor without breaking your rhythm. You've done this 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. This isn't a hobby. This isn't mindful crafting. This is your job. This is the difference between freezing to death in the winter and merely being miserably cold. Every inch of thread you produce is another tiny victory against the endless, seeping damp of this island. The spindle spins, a tiny wooden planet dancing on a string. Its faint fey-huff, huff-faff, the fey, the sound of survival, not peace, not tranquility. Now, it gives off a gentle heat, which is a very poetic way of saying it's not very warm. The heat radiates about 3 feet in any direction, creating a small, coveted circle of less cold. You are sitting just inside this circle. Your front is lukewarm. Your back, facing the vast, dark expanse of the roundhouse, feels like it's pressed against a block of ice. The cold doesn't just come from the air, it seeps up from the very earth beneath you. A deep primal chill that works its way into your bones. And the smell, that unique earthy fragrance. Let's be a little more precise. Peat smoke is not like wood smoke. It doesn't have that crisp, clean, nostalgic scent. It is thick. It is acrid. It smells like burning dirt, like a bog that has been set on fire. It's a heavy, oily smoke that hangs in the air like a shroud, because of course there is no chimney. This is the premium open, concept living package of the 1st century BC. The smoke simply rises, hits the magnificent rain-proof ceiling of thatch, and then, well, it mostly just stays. It drifts around in a lazy, permanent fog that coats everything it touches with a fine layer of greasy soot. Breathe in, go on, feel that smoke coat the back of your throat. Feel it sting your eyes. They are perpetually red-rimmed, perpetually watering. The good news is, the smoke is an excellent preservative. The bad news is, it's preserving you from the inside out, slowly curing your lungs like a side of ham. You'll find bits of black stuff in your phlegm every morning. It is just a sign. The air quality is consistent. Let's widen our perspective. You're in a roundhouse. A magnificent structure, really. A testament to engineering without written language or advanced mathematics. It's huge. But the lack of sharp corners, while aesthetically pleasing, is also a practical feature for a space with no lighting. The only light comes from that sullen red heart of the peat fire. You are not alone in your quiet, meditative craft. Far from it. This single, large, circular room is home to you, your 2 siblings, your parents, your father's mother, your uncle, his wife, and their 3 small children, and the chickens, and, during the coldest nights, the prized pig and a couple of the more valuable sheep. It's a full house, an interspecies, a type of herb you haven't discovered yet. The very concept of being alone is a bizarre and terrifying luxury, like having 2 pairs of shoes. Listen past the rain, past the whir of your spindle. What do you hear? From the shadows to your left comes a wet, rattling cough, followed by a guttural spitting sound. That's your grandmother. It's probably pneumonia, but the customer service department for diagnostics hasn't been established yet. From the other side of the fire, your father is snoring. It is a loud, sputtering, unpredictable symphony of snorts, whistles, and deep, gurgling rumbles, like a bear trying to drown in a bog. Every so often he chokes, goes silent for a terrifying few seconds, and then explodes back into consciousness with a snort that makes the chickens flutter nervously in their corner. One of the babies is crying, a thin, reedy, miserable wail that has been the background noise of your life for 6 months. Its mother is trying to soothe it, murmuring something, but the crying just continues, a needle of sound in the dark. Simone is chewing loudly, with their mouth open, a rhythmic, wet, smacking sound. You don't know who it is, and you don't want to, and beneath it all, the rustle and occasional soft clucking of the chickens, the grunt of the pig as it shifts its weight, and the faint, constant scratching sound that might be a mouse, or it might be the lice in the hair of the person sleeping next to you. This is your sanctuary, your place of peace. Now, let's consider your personal comfort. You're sitting on the floor. The floor is packed earth. It is not level. It is not clean. It's a compressed rotting mat of vegetation, mixed with generations of spilled food, tracked in mud, animal droppings, and who knows what else. Every time you shift your weight, a puff of dust and a faint sour compost like smell rises up. The damp from the earth is working its way through the rushes, through your woolen tunic, chilling you to the bone. Your lower back is a knot of pain, no memory foam. You're wearing a single garment, a tunic of coarse wool, the very same wool you are spinning now. Soap is a luxury item for distant, decadent southerners. Your tunic is washed, occasionally by beating it against a rock in the nearest stream. This process mostly just rearranges the dirt. The good news is, the natural grease in the wool makes it somewhat water-resistant. The bad news is, it also makes it a 5-star hotel for fleas and lice. You have lice? Every own has lice. They are your constant companions. A time you feel a familiar itch at the nape of your neck. You don't even think about it. You just reach back, scratch hard with your dirty fingernails, and continue spinning. It's just part of the sensory landscape of being alive. A deep, hollow ache in your belly that is never quite satisfied. Simone stirs by the fire. She ladles a measure of grey viscous liquid into a shared wooden bowl. You put down your spindle and crawl over. Behold your evening meal. It is pottage. It was pottage yesterday, and it will be pottage tomorrow. It is the eternal stew of your people. The base is whatever grain you manage to grow and harvest. Barley, maybe some spelt, boiled in water for hours until it breaks down into a thick, lumpy gruel. Into this has gone, well, whatever was available, some foraged greens, now boiled into slimy, unrecognizable strings, a few chunks of turnip, soft and watery. If you were lucky, there might be a few shreds of meat from a rabbit caught in a snare. But not tonight. Tonight's special ingredient appears to be dried beans, which have been soaking for a day, but are still stubbornly, defiantly hard. The bowl is passed to you. There are no spoons. You use your fingers or a piece of hard, flat bread if you have it. You don't have it. You dip your greasy, wool-scented fingers into the warm slurry and bring a scoop to your mouth. Let's analyze the taste profile. The dominant flavor is smoke. Everything tastes of the peat fire. Salt is a precious commodity, traded from the coast, used for preserving meat, not for wasting on daily meals. There are no spices. The overwhelming sensation is one of texture. It's a texture that scrapes against your teeth. Teeth, by the way, that are worn down from this diet. You have a molar that's been aching for a month, a deep throbbing pain that flares whenever you chew. You've learnt to chew on the other side of your mouth. You eat in silence, listening to the slurping and gulping of your family members as they dip their own unwashed hands into the same communal bowl. Your younger brother coughs directly into his hand, and then, without missing a beat, plunges it back into the pottage. No one comments. Germ theory is still about 2,000 years away from its initial public offering. You just try to scoop from a different section of the bowl. You finish your portion and the gnawing ache in your stomach has been replaced by a heavy, bloated feeling. The beans sit in your gut like small rocks. You know from experience that they will cause you and everyone else in this unventilated space a great deal of intestinal distress later tonight. It's a bonding experience. The bowl is empty. Your mother takes it, scrapes it with her thumb, and places it back by the fire. She might rinse it in the morning if she remembers. The rain on the roof continues its soft, relentless drumming. The fire sinks lower, its red glow weakening. The darkness in the roundhouse seems to press in, becoming thicker, heavier. The air is a rich cocktail of smells: peat smoke, sleeping bodies, damp wool, old food, chicken droppings, and the lingering aroma of your family's collective flatulence. You can spin a little more thread before it's completely dark. The quiet satisfaction of a day's work done, the warmth of the family hearth, the shelter from the storm. A life of endless labour, constant discomfort, and zero privacy. The peace isn't a state of contentment, and you will sit here. So, how are you enjoying your rustic retreat? Still feeling that deep spiritual connection to the past? Or are you perhaps developing a newfound, desperate appreciation for central heating, indoor plumbing, and the revolutionary concept of having your own bedroom? Think about that. The next time you feel the urge to get back to nature. Nature is cold, and it smells like a wet pig, and it is always waiting just outside the door. And the door, by the way, is just a damp animal hide that does a terrible job of keeping out the wind. Sweet dreams. So you've made it inside. Good for you. You duck your head under the low lintel. A polite term for a rough, hewn log that seems designed specifically to acquaint your forehead with the concept of a concussion, and you push aside the heavy, greasy animal hide that serves as the front door. It slaps back into place behind you with a wet, heavy thud, plunging you into a profound and disorienting gloom. The muffled patter of the autumn rain on the thatch roof is the only sound you recognize from your world. Everything else is alien. Let's start with that roof, shall we? The one in your cozy little daydream, several feet thick and perfectly waterproof. A magnificent piece of pre-industrial engineering, woven from reeds, straw, and whatever else could be harvested from the marshy landscape around you. From the outside, it looks like a giant, hairy mushroom cap settled comfortably on the earth. From the inside, it is the ceiling of your universe, a dark, looming dome that smells of damp and decay, and perfectly waterproof. That's a lovely thought. A premium feature you haven't paid for. The truth is, a thatch roof is less a solid object and more a very slow moving sponge. For the first hour of a steady rain, it does its job admirably. The dry reeds soak up the moisture, swelling and tightening, and you can almost convince yourself that you are safe and dry. You can hear the rain, a soft percussive drumming that feels ancient and soothing. But this is Britain. The rain doesn't last for an hour, and eventually the sponge becomes saturated. You just know it's there. Then, a few minutes later, another drop lands on your hand. A third finds its way into the bowl of stew you were hoping to eat. Soon, a dozen tiny leaks have established themselves, each with its own unique and irritating rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. Clay pots and wooden bowls are scattered across the floor to catch the worst of it, and the constant plinking sound becomes the new soundtrack to your life, a maddening counterpoint to the drumming on the roof. But the water isn't the only thing up there. Your roof is not just a roof. It is a thriving, multi-species ecosystem. It is a high-rise apartment building for everything that crawls, flies, and scurries. By day, it's home to sparrows and wrens, who find the thatch a delightful place to build their nests, until you realize that you can hear them. A constant. They are the true masters of this house, feasting on stored grain, insects, and anything else they can find. Their little claws make a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. Sometimes they lose their footing. A juvenile rat, clumsy and stupid, a furry, squeaking surprise package from the heavens. And then there are the insects. Spiders, of course. Legions of them. Their webs coat the underside of the thatch in a delicate, sticky lacework that is invisible in the gloom until you stand up too quickly and walk face first into one. But it's the smaller things that are the real menace. The thatch is crawling with mites, fleas, and lice, all just waiting for a warm-blooded host. That's you, to drop onto. You are never truly alone in the roundhouse. You are merely the largest organism in a complex and hungry food web. Now let's address the centerpiece of your tranquil fantasy, the fire, that quietly burning pile of peat with its dark red embers and gentle heat. This is perhaps the greatest lie of all. The fire is the heart of the roundhouse. Yes, but it is a black, cancerous heart that is actively trying to kill you. Let's begin with the smoke. Peat does not burn cleanly. There is, if you are lucky, a hole in the center of the roof. This hole is not a design feature for ventilation. Its primary purpose is to let you know if it is day or night. The smoke, having no direct route of escape, simply fills the available space. It rises, hits the ceiling, and then slowly sinks, creating a permanent, suffocating cloud in the upper half of the room. It's like living inside a cigar. You learn to exist in a perpetual crouch, keeping your head below the worst of the smog layer. Standing up straight is an act of aggression against your own lungs. The smoke gets in your eyes, stinging them with a relentless chemical burn until they are permanently bloodshot and weeping. A deep, hacking, productive cough that racks your entire body. This cough is your constant companion. It's the first thing you hear in the morning and the last thing you hear at night. It is the sound of your body slowly losing its war against your own atmosphere. Everything you own, everything you touch, is coated in a fine, greasy layer of soot. The woven your clothes are stiff with it. Your hair feels gritty and oily, no matter how often you rinse it in the freezing river. Run a hand through it, and your fingers come away grey. Your skin itself is impregnated with the stuff. The lines on your palms are etched in black. The inside of your nostrils is permanently coated in a layer of grime. The very taste in your mouth is of ash and earth. You are being slowly cured, like a piece of meat in a smokehouse. And one day, that cough will deepen, your breathing will shorten, and the smoke will finally claim you. But for now, it's just ambience. If you are sitting within 3 feet of the embers, you are roasting. The side of your body facing the fire feels tight and scorched, while your back remains stubbornly, miserably cold. It is a constant battle of rotating yourself like a pig on a spit, trying to achieve an even temperature and failing every time. Move just 5 feet away from the fire, and the temperature plummets. The gentle heat becomes a distant, taunting memory. The cold seeps up from the packed earth floor, through the thin layer of rushes, and into your bones. A deep, unshakable chill that no amount of wool can fend off. Cold draughts snake their way through the wattle. And daub walls, little ghostly fingers of winter air that raise goosebumps on your skin, so everyone huddles. You live your life in a tight, miserable circle around this smoky, inefficient heat source, shoulder to shoulder with your family, your neighbors, and their livestock. Which brings us to the unique earthy fragrance. Oh, it's unique. All right. It is a symphony of smells, an olfactory assault that would make a modern sanitation worker gag. The base note is, of course, the peat smoke, that heavy, boggy, acrid scent. But it's a complex bouquet. Layered on top of that is the smell of unwashed humanity. You smell of stale sweat, of the lanolin in your wool clothes, of the dirt on your skin. When someone gets sick, which is often, you add the smells of vomit, fever, sweat, and dysentery to the mix. Then you add the animals for much of the year, especially in the cold, wet months. The livestock is brought inside at night, for their safety from predators and for their warmth. That's right. Your open, planned living space includes a small flock of sheep, a couple of goats, and maybe even a calf. They also add the rich, pungent aromas of manure and urine. The floor is packed earth, which is very absorbent, but there is a limit. The air becomes thick with the sharp tang of ammonia, so the earthy fragrance is actually peat smoke, human body odor, sickness, and animal excrement, all blended together and left to marinate in a damp, enclosed space. It's a smell that gets into your clothes, your hair, and your soul. You stop noticing it after a while, which is, perhaps, the saddest part of all. Now, where are you sitting through all this? On the hay-strewn ground. Let's be clear. It's not hay. Hay is valuable animal fodder. You don't get to sit on the food. You are sitting on a layer of cut bracken reeds, or rushes spread over the cold, damp, compact. It is not comfortable. The stems are brittle and sharp, and they poke you through your thin woolen trousers. It is a lumpy, uneven surface that ensures you will never find a truly comfortable position. Your hips ache. It is a habitat. They live and breed in the rushes, and they see you as a walking, talking, all. These little sores, weeping and painful, are just another part of your daily existence. Lice are also a given. They live in your hair, in the seams of your clothes. At night, you can feel them crawling on your scalp. There is no cure, only management. So you are sitting on an itchy, lumpy, cold floor, in a room full of smoke drafts and the smell of a petting zoo toilet, surrounded by coughing, smelly people. And what are you doing? You are engaging in the ancient, repetitive labor of spinning wool, which is supposed to bring you a source of profound peace. Let's examine that. This is not the clean, soft, fluffy stuff you might buy from a craft store. This is wool straight off the sheep's back. And sheep are not clean animals. The fleece is heavy and greasy with lanolin, a thick, waxy substance that coats your fingers and palms in a sticky film. But it's also full of other things. Burrs, twigs, and little bits of dried mud are tangled in the fibers. There are also dags, clumps of wool matted together with dried feces. And if you're really unlucky, you might find the desiccated remains of a sheep-ked, a disgusting wingless fly that lives as a parasite in the fleece. The whole mass smells strongly of wet sheep, lanolin, and manure. The coarse wool chafes your skin, leaving it red and raw. Little cuts from the sharp vegetable matter in the fleece are common, and they sting. The drop spindle, a simple piece of wood with a clay or stone whorl, spins and spins. It does make a soft whirring sound, but that sound is utterly lost in the cacophony of the roundhouse. The baby in the corner is crying, a thin, reedy wail that has been going on for an hour. It probably has two men are having a low, grumbling argument over a gambling debt. The goats are bleating, a sound like a rusty hinge being forced open and shut. Someone is coughing, that deep, wet, familiar cough that seems to echo from the very walls. The dogs, curled up near the fire, occasionally erupt into a frenzy of barking at a shadow, or a noise from outside. Plink. You eat, you sleep, you work, you argue, you are sick, you give birth, and you die in this one single circular room, in full view of everyone you know. The no sharp corners aspect doesn't create a harmonious flow of energy. It just means there's nowhere to retreat, nowhere to hide. You are always on display, always part of the collective. The repetitive motion of spinning isn't meditative. This isn't a hobby. It is a critical link in the chain of your survival. The found peace you feel is not tranquility. It is the dull, heavy resignation of a life with no other options. The itching of the flea bites on your legs. The gnawing ache in your lower back from the hard floor. The greasy, stinking fleece in your hands. This is your reality. The autumn twilight is falling. The rain is drumming on the leaky roof, and you are here, in the heart of the Iron Age. And the only peace you will find is the brief, dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted, before you wake up in the morning to do it all over again. Assuming, of course, a rat doesn't fall on your face in the middle of the night. The rain has started. Of course it has. You knew it was coming. A familiar damp earthy tang that promises a long grey evening. A promise the British Isles have been keeping with one moment. The cool, wet air is on your face. The whisper of wind in the dying autumn leaves. The next, you're inside. The sound of the rain changes instantly. A constant, not just dim, but a deep, perpetual twilight that the single central fire does very little to challenge. There are no windows, of course. Windows are just invitations for the wind, the rain, and whatever else is slinking through the dusk to come inside. A womb of wattle, daub, and wood, smeared with a plaster of clay, straw, and animal dung. It's an excellent insulator. It radiates a quiet, almost reluctant heat from a bed of deep red embers that look like a sleeping dragon's heart. The light it gives off is weak, sullen. It gets into everything. A home that perpetually smells like a bog that's been set on fire. You find your spot on the floor, a space designated for you by unspoken. It rustles as you settle down, the dry stalks crackling under your weight. You can feel the damp chill of the earth seeping up through the thin layer of insulation, a constant reminder of the cold that's always waiting just outside the wall. You pick up your work, a cloud of freshly sheared sheep's wool. It's still warm, faintly from the body of the animal. It's heavy in your hands. It feels slick, almost oily, against your fingertips. This isn't the clean, fluffy, carded wool you might buy in a sterile plastic bag. This is raw. It's full of tiny bits of dirt, burrs, and flecks of dried vegetation that the sheep picked up in the pastures. It smells like a sheep, a musky, animal scent that mingles with the peat smoke and the general aroma of unwashed humanity that fills the space. Your fingers, calloused and sure, begin the ancient, repetitive dance. You pull a small tuft from the mass, teasing the fibres apart, drafting them into a loose sliver. Then you introduce the spindle, a simple tool, nothing more than a sharpened stick of polished wood, weighted at the bottom with a wall. A small carved disc of stone or clay. You lick your fingers, twist the end of the woolen sliver, and attach it to the hook or notch at the top of the spindle. You give it a smart twist with your thigh, and it drops spinning in the dim, smoky air. There it is, that tiny, hypnotic sound, a soft, rhythmic fey whirrer, fey that's almost too quiet to hear over the drumming of the rain and the other sounds of the house. It's the sound of civilization being created, one thread at a time. Your left hand feeds the fibres, controlling the thickness, while your right hand guides the spindle, keeping its rotation smooth and steady. Pull, draft, twist. The spindle spins, collecting the newly formed yarn. Let it slow. Catch it. Wind the thread on. Pull, draft, twist. The prompt I was given suggests that this action brings you a deep-seated calm, a sense of connection to your ancestors, a meditative rhythm in a world without sharp corners. Let's be honest with each other. That's a lovely romantic thought. The reality is somewhat different. This isn't a hobby. This isn't mindfulness. This is work. This is the relentless, tedious, non-negotiable labour that stands between your family and freezing to death. Every foot of yarn you produce is another tiny patch on a threadbare tunic, another row knitted into a cloak that will hopefully keep the winter damp from seeping into someone's bones. The calm you feel isn't peace. It's the quiet resignation of a creature that has no other choice. It's the focus that comes from a task so critical that your mind can't afford to wander. The motion is second nature. Yes, your muscles know it better than your brain does. But your body aches. Your fingers are raw from the coarse wool, the lanolin doing little to soothe the friction. A small cut on your index finger from a slip of a knife while gutting a fish this morning stings with every twist of the fibres. This isn't Zen. This is ergonomics from hell. Let's talk about your environment. This is open concept living, Iron Age style. That means you are sharing this approximately 30-foot diameter circle with about 15 other people. And their livestock, over in the deeper shadows, against the curved wall, is your extended family. There's an old woman, your husband's grandmother perhaps. You can't see her clearly. It's not a dry, polite cough. It's a deep, wet, rattling sound that seems to come from the very bottom of her lungs. It ends in a hacking gasp for air. It's a sound you hear every night. The sound of what they'll one day call pneumonia or bronchitis. Here, it's just called winter lung. And everyone knows how it ends. She spits something into the fire. No one reacts. This is as normal as breathing. There are children. They aren't laughing or playing loudly. He's got a festering sore on his leg, a simple scrape from a fall a few days ago that has turned angry and red, oozing a pale yellow fluid. You cleaned it with a bit of moss and water. But you know the signs, the heat you can feel coming off it from a foot away. The sickly, sweet smell of infection, that's just starting to cut through the peat smoke. There are no antibiotics. There is no antiseptic. There is a poultice of herbs that might work or might not. More likely not. You try not to look at the leg. You try not to listen to the whimpering. You just focus on the spindle, pull, draft, twist. A man sits closer to the fire. Your brother, maybe, or your husband. He's just come back from checking the animal pens outside. He carries the smell of the rain and the wet woods with him. A clean, sharp scent that briefly cuts through the fug of the roundhouse before being swallowed by it. He says nothing. He just nods in your direction and settles onto a low stool, pulling a whetstone from his belt pouch. He begins to sharpen the edge of a long iron knife. Face scrape. Asterisk. The sound of stone on metal is slow, deliberate, and deeply unsettling. It's the sound of preparation. Preparation for what? For butchering an animal, for settling a dispute with the neighbours from the next hill fort over. The line between the two is thinner than you might think. He works in silence, his face a mask of concentration in the flickering ember. The blade catches a dull red glint from the fire, a fleeting promise of violence in this supposedly peaceful domestic scene. And then there are the other roommates, the ones who don't pay rent. The good news is, in winter, You bring your most valuable livestock inside to protect them from predators. The bad news is, in winter, you bring your most valuable livestock inside. On the far side of the roundhouse, separated from the human living area by a low partition of woven hurdles that does absolutely nothing to contain the smell, are the animals. A couple of sheep, their wool even thicker and dirtier than the stuff in your hands. And maybe a young calf. You can hear them shift, the soft stamp of a hoof on the earthen floor, the rustle of hay as one of them forages for a stray stalk, the heavy, wet sound of a cow breathing through its nose and, of course, the smells, the warm, grassy, slightly sweet smell of their breath, the sharp ammoniac tang of their urine soaking into the floor, the rich, earthy stench of their dung, all of it mingling, rising with the heat, becoming part of the very air you breathe. This is your air freshener, a premium blend of peat smoke, unwashed bodies, simmering stew, and fresh manure. And with the livestock come the pests, the hay you're sitting on, the furs the children are sleeping on, the coats of the animals themselves. They are all teeming with life. Fleas, lice, mites. You feel a familiar itch on your scalp and scratch it without thinking. Another one on your ankle. You're used to it being constantly. Low, grade itchy is the default human condition. Privacy. You share your home, your bed, and your body with a whole ecosystem of tiny, hungry companions. Let's go back to that calm. Is it calm you feel? Or is it a profound, bone-deep weariness? The repetitive motion of spinning isn't meditative. It's a way to keep your hands busy while your mind races. You're not contemplating the eternal. You're performing a constant, anxious inventory. Is there enough dried meat to last until the first thaw? Is the grain store holding up? Or are the rats getting into it again? You heard them last night. The faint, frantic scratching from behind the wall. That cough the old woman has. Is it worse today than yesterday? The child's leg, will he lose it? Will he even survive it? A child, running and laughing 1 week, and buried under a small mound of stones the next, all from a tiny, insignificant scratch. The man sharpening his knife. Is he just preparing for a hunt? Or did he have words with someone from the other settlement at the river bend? You saw the way they looked at each other last week when their cattle mingled. A look that promised trouble. More trouble means more mouths to feed, or fewer hands to work. This is the hum of constant, low-level anxiety. It's the background radiation of a life lived on the absolute edge of disaster. The rhythmic fee of your spindle, and the dull drumming of the rain aren't a lullaby. They're the soundtrack to 1,000 tiny calculations of survival. Every drop of rain is one step closer to a flooded field and a ruined crop. Every inch of yarn is one small defense against a winter that can and will kill the unprepared. The calm you're supposed to be feeling is a luxury you cannot afford. It's a modern invention born of central heating, grocery stores, and the certainty that you will probably wake up tomorrow. You have none of those things. Your spindle slows. The yarn you've spun is now a fat, tight cone around its shaft. You stop, catch it, and expertly wind the last bit of thread into place. You break it off from the raw wool, leaving a small tail to start the next one. One full spindle. A small, tangible victory. It represents maybe an hour of your life. It might be enough to patch a hole the size of your palm. You set it down carefully in a woven basket beside you, where a few others already lie like pale, sleeping grubs. You reach for another handful of the greasy wool. Your fingers are stiff. Your back aches. The smoke stings your eyes, making them water. You take a deep breath. The air thick with the smells of life and decay, of smoke and earth and animals. You lick your fingers. and with a practiced flick of your wrist, you send it spinning down into the darkness again. Feywerer, asterisk. The ancient, repetitive labour begins anew. Not because it brings you peace. The reality is the relentless, spinning thread. The thread you cling to. The thread that holds your entire, fragile world together. And you know, with a certainty that chills you more than the damp earth beneath you, that it could snap at any moment. There it is. That feeling you were promised. That deep, ancestral peace. You can almost touch it, can't you? The rain drumming a soft, muffled rhythm on the thatch above. A sound like a giant's gentle heartbeat. The peat fire pulsing with a quiet, ember, red glow. A warmth that doesn't scorch but seeps into your bones. The rhythmic, whispering whir of the wooden spindle as it dances in the air, twisting coarse, oily fleece into the very thread of survival. Your fingers, slick with the natural lanolin of the sheep, work almost of their own accord, drafting and twisting, a direct connection to a simpler, more meaningful time. That's just the brief, blessed absence of a more immediate misery. It's the feeling of coming in from the freezing rain. It's the neurological lull that comes from a repetitive task, when your brain is too exhausted to contemplate the full, panoramic horror of your existence. This isn't Zen, this is shock. Let's start again, shall we? Let's really settle into this moment. First, take a deep breath. Go through your nose. What do you smell? It's just the top note in a very complex, very challenging bouquet. Underneath that smoke, there's the smell of damp earth, not the pleasant smell of a garden after a spring shower. This is the smell of a compacted dirt floor. It's a sour, mildewy smell, the smell of things slowly rotting at a molecular level. Now layer on top of that the smell of old grease, the lingering ghost of 1,000 meals, mostly consisting of boiled meat and rendered fat that has soaked into the wattle, and daub walls into the thatch, into the very air you're breathing. It's a heavy, cloying smell, like a butcher's shop that's forgotten to pay its electricity bill. And then, of course, there are the living occupants. You're not alone in here, not by a long shot. This isn't your private little meditation yurt. This is the family home, the community centre. Deodorant is 2,000 years in your future. A daily bath is a logistical fantasy. The best you can hope for is a quick scrub in a freezing river, which you last did. When was it? Last week, the week before. Add to that the specific sense. Over in the corner, your grandfather is huddled under a pile of furs. He has a cough, a deep, wet, productive cough. And with that cough comes the sweet, sickly smell of infection. There's a baby somewhere in the gloom, and it contributes the sharp, ammoniacal stench of its wrappings, which haven't been changed quite recently enough. And let's not forget the animals. During the cold months, the valuable livestock are brought inside. There might be a couple of goats, a calf, maybe some chickens, all sharing this open concept living space with you. So, to our already complex fragrance profile, we must now add the unmistakable, eye-watering notes of manure and wet feathers. So, take that deep breath again. Peat smoke, mildew, rancid fat, stale sweat, sickness, urine and goat. That's the smell of poverty. It's a smell that clings to your hair, your clothes, your skin. You can taste it on the back of your tongue. Now, let's talk about the work itself. This spinning. Your fingers are slick with lanolin. It sounds pleasant, like a natural moisturizer. It is not. It's a thick, waxy yellow grease that smells distinctly of sheep. Not a clean, fluffy sheep from a petting zoo. A real sheep, an animal that lives its life outdoors, getting rained on, sleeping in its own filth, and collecting every burr, tick, and piece of dried feces in its fleece, all of which you are now intimately acquainted with. Your fingers are raw, not from the softness of the wool, but from its coarseness. Every so often you have to stop and pick out a thistle, a piece of twig, or something unidentifiable and vaguely crunchy. The wool is dirty. It was washed, after a fashion, in cold water, with a bit of stale urine for its ammonia content. So, as you spin, a fine dust of dried mud and sheep dander falls into your lap, making the hay you're sitting on even more unpleasant. And the motion, that ancient, repetitive motion. After the first 10 minutes, it's not meditative. Your shoulders are screaming. A hot, sharp pain is building between your shoulder blades from hunching over in the dim light. Your wrist aches from the constant flicking motion required to keep the spindle turning. The spindle itself, a simple piece of wood with a clay or stone wall, feels impossibly heavy. Constantly, it clatters onto the dirt floor, the newly spun thread gets dirty, and you have to stop, pick it up, curse under your breath, and start the whole process again. This isn't a hobby. This isn't your artisanal Etsy store where you sell hand-spun yarn for $50 a skein. This is a desperate, non-negotiable chore. You spin because if you don't, you won't have cloth. If you don't have cloth, you can't make clothes. If you can't make clothes, you will freeze to death in the winter. Meditate on that for a while. Now, where are you sitting? On a pile of hay. Sounds rustic, doesn't it? It's a thin layer of dried grass spread over a floor of cold, hard, packed earth. It is alive with fleas, mites, and lice, all of whom are delighted to have a large, warm mammal plonk itself down for dinner. You feel a tiny prick on your ankle. A flea. You scratch it, knowing it's futile. You are a walking buffet. You are sitting cross-legged, or with your legs tucked to one side, leaning forward to see your work by the failing light of the fire. There are no cushions. There is no memory foam. There is only the unyielding earth and a thin bug-infested layer of scratchy grass between you and it. You shift your weight, trying to find a comfortable position, but there isn't one. There is only a choice between different kinds of discomfort. Let's look around this circular, the no sharp corners thing. It is because building a round structure with flexible wooden posts, wattle, and a plaster of mud, straw, and dung daub is simply the most efficient and stable way to do it. It's an engineering solution, not a spiritual one. The lack of corners just means there's nowhere to hide. What is that? The whimpering baby your two older brothers, currently engaged in a low guttural argument over who gets the last of the fermented berry juice. Your sister, nursing her own child, her expression one of pure, undiluted exhaustion. A gaggle of younger cousins, chasing a terrified chicken around the central hearth. You can hear every sniffle, every belch, every passive, aggressive sigh. You can see every dirty look. When you sleep in a pile of bodies, a tangle of limbs and furs for warmth. The good news is, you are never lonely. The bad news is, you are never, ever alone. Your every failure, your every weakness, your every moment of despair is public, or rather, the lack of it. The peat fire in the center provides that gentle, glowing warmth. It also provides a pathetic amount of light. The circle of effective illumination is maybe 6 feet in diameter. Beyond that, the roundhouse descends into a deep, smoky gloom. The walls are lost in shadow. The faces of people sitting just a few yards away are flickering masks of light and darkness. This perpetual twilight does things to your eyes. They sting. They water constantly from the smoke. There is just a hole in the peak of the conical roof where some of the smoke is supposed to escape. Supposed to being the operative phrase, you probably have a constant, low-grade headache from carbon monoxide poisoning. What you call seasonal affective disorder. The rain outside isn't just a cozy soundtrack. It is a reminder of your confinement. It means the world outside has dissolved into a sea of mud. Travel is impossible. Hunting is difficult. The world shrinks to the size of this smoky, stinking, crowded room. The drumming on the roof isn't a lullaby. It is the sound of the walls closing in. Now, someone stirs. It is time for the evening meal. It rumbles with a mixture of desperate hunger and dread, because you know what's for dinner. A woman, your mother perhaps, or an aunt, gets up and ladles a grey viscous substance from a large clay pot that sits perpetually by the fire. This is the pottage, the perpetual stew, the engine of your society. Into this pot go some grain, usually barley or oats, roughly ground between two stones, meaning every mouthful contains a healthy dose of grit that will slowly grind your teeth down to stumps. Some dried peas or beans, whatever greens could be foraged that day, nettles, dandelions, wild garlic if you're lucky, and the meat. More likely, it's just the bones and gristle. The flavours of last week mingle with the flavours of today in a timeless, joyless fusion. She hands you a small wooden bowl. You don't have your own spoon. You might have carved one, but more likely you share one with a few other people. It has the texture of warm, gritty mud. You take a mouthful. The taste is... there is no salt to speak of. That's a precious commodity reserved for preserving meat, not for seasoning. There are no spices. There is only the bland, starchy taste of boiled grain, every few mouthfuls. Your teeth crunch down on a piece of sand or stone from the grinding process. It is a grim necessity to keep your body functioning for another day of labour. You eat it quickly, without pleasure, because to linger on it is to invite despair. The cut on your hand from 3 weeks ago still hasn't properly healed. You finish your portion and look up. The fire is dying down, casting long dancing shadows that make the familiar faces around you look like ghouls. The grandfather has fallen into a fit of coughing, each bark echoing in the sudden quiet. The baby is crying again, a thin, reedy wail of hunger or discomfort. The argument between your brothers has escalated, their voices now low and menacing, and you sit there, in the damp, in the dark, in the stink. Your body aches, your eyes burn. More spinning, more hauling water, more foraging for food that tastes of nothing. More of this endless, grinding, circular existence inside this round, smoky, miserable hut feel, that deep, sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, the cold dread that washes over you as you contemplate the utter, hopeless bleakness of it all. Now Fetat Fey is authentic. That is the feeling you've been looking for. Not peace, not tranquility, just the quiet, profound and soul, crushingly heavy weight of reality. Welcome to the Iron Age. Try not to think about it too much. You have yarn to spin. Winter is coming. All right. Let's talk about that deep, grounding tranquility you see in movies about the ancient world. You know the scene. The camera pans across a misty, green landscape. A gentle rain is falling. A lone figure, rugged but serene, ducks into a cozy, primitive dwelling. Inside, a fire glows, casting soft shadows. They sit and begin some ancient, rhythmic craft, spinning, weaving, carving. The world outside fades away, and there is only the task, the warmth, the shelter, a connection to the earth. a profound soul, deep calm. We're going to visit that place today. Specifically, a Celtic roundhouse in the British Isles, dusk, autumn rain, a huge thatched roof perfectly deflecting the water, a quiet peat fire providing a gentle warmth and an earthy aroma. You're sitting on hay, your skilled fingers twisting raw wool into thread with a simple wooden spindle. The repetitive motion, the circular space, the soft sounds, they bring you, and I quote, a long-standing peace. And like most fantasies, it's a load of absolute garbage. The kind of romantic nonsense that gets people killed. That long-standing peace you are feeling, that is probably the first stage of carbon monoxide poisoning. You would find misery swiftly followed by a rather unpleasant and undignified death. So let's go there. Let's feel that peace. Congratulations. Congratulations. The sky LeBru's dishwater grey. Each drop is cold, heavy, and full of malice. It's not the refreshing summer shower of your poetry books. This is the Iron Age British rain. It's a liquid manifestation of seasonal depression, and its only goal is to seep into your bones and stay there until spring. You hunch your shoulders and make a run for it. A clumsy, slipping dash across a patch of ground that is less earth and more a primordial soup of mud, animal droppings, and despair. You reach the roundhouse and have to stoop low to get through the doorway, a dark, narrow slot in the wattle and daub walls. You don't so much enter as you are birthed into the gloom. The first thing that hits you is not the warmth, it's the air. You can't just breathe it. You have to chew it first. It's a thick, greasy, tangible substance, a clinging fog woven from a dozen different stenches, each one competing for dominance. The foundation of this olfactory assault is, of course, the smoke. That quietly burning peat fire in the center of the room has no chimney. Let me repeat that. So instead, the smoke simply billows upwards, hits the inside of that magnificent multi-layered thatched roof, and then ... It just sort of hangs there, a permanent, hovering, toxic cloud. It coats everything. They are black, sticky, covered in a layer of greasy creosote that would give a modern health and safety inspector a fatal aneurysm. The smoke stings and scratches at your corneas, making the already profound darkness swim with blurry, phantom shapes. It catches in the back of your throat, a perpetual rasping irritation. That unique, earthy aroma of the peat is the smell of your own lifespan being actively shortened with every breath. It's the smell of emphysema in its folksy, artisanal stage. But the smoke is just the top note. Beneath it, a whole world of foulness awaits. There is the damp. The floor is just compressed earth, and the ceaseless rain outside means the ground is sweating a permanent, clammy moisture. This dampness gets into the hay and bracken scattered on the floor. It's not fresh, clean bedding. It's a rotting, mulchy carpet that smells like a compost heap someone has been using as a toilet, which isn't far from the truth. Then there is the smell of unwashed humanity. Deodorant is 2,000 years in the future. A full body wash is a rare and questionable luxury. You and the 15 other members of your extended family crammed into this single circular room all smell. You smell of sweat, of stale wood smoke that has impregnated your woolen clothes, of the food you ate, of the work you do. Old Cador, the patriarch, smells of sour milk and the infection in his leg. Your cousin's new baby smells of, well, what babies smell of when diapers are just a bundle of moss that gets changed twice a day if it is lucky. And let's not forget the animals. The good news is, you don't have to worry about your prize goat or your 2 best chickens being stolen or eaten by a wolf during the night. The bad news is, they live in here with you. They are your roommates. They are tethered just a few feet away, placidly chewing, shifting, and relieving themselves onto the already fragrant floor. So, add the sharp, acrid tang of ammonia from urine and the rich, organic funk of fresh dung to the atmospheric gumbo. This is the air you are breathing, a cocktail of carcinogens, bacteria, animal waste, and human bio-odors, all stewing together in a warm, damp, enclosed space. It is so thick, you feel it on your skin, a greasy, invisible film welcome home. You find your spot on the floor. There are no chairs. Furniture is an absurd luxury. You just park yourself on a pile of damp flea-infested hay and try to get comfortable, which is impossible. The ground is hard, lumpy, and cold. A bundle of freshly shorn sheep's wool. This isn't the clean, soft, processed roving you'd buy from an Etsy store. This wool was on a sheep approximately 3 hours ago. It is raw. It is coarse. Your fingers sink into it, and they come out coated in a thick, sticky, yellowish slime that smells, quite distinctly, like a wet farm animal. The wool is also full of other things. Little bits of dried mud, a thorn, a piece of bracken, what you sincerely hope is a harmless beetle, and, inevitably, tiny dried pellets of sheep dung. Your job is to pick these out as you go. It is quality control, Iron Age style. You take a tuft of this greasy, clumpy mess and begin to tease the fibres apart. Then you twist them, attaching the end to your drop spindle. The spindle itself is a simple thing. A stick with a wall at the bottom. A small flywheel made of wood or stone or clay. You give it a flick of the wrist, and it starts to spin, suspended in the air, twisting the wool into a crude, uneven thread. This is the extremely tiny but regular whirring sound. It is not a peaceful sound. It is the sound of your life's labour. It is the metronome of your existence. Whir, spin, draft. Your fingers, already calloused, become raw. The lanolin, while good for waterproofing, doesn't stop the constant friction. The coarse fibres feel like fine grit sandpaper against your skin. But it isn't meditative. It is agonizingly boring. From the moment you can be trusted not to swallow the spindle to the day your eyes get too dim to see the thread, you spin and spin and spin, because if you don't, you won't have thread. If you can't weave cloth, your family will literally freeze to death in the winter. This isn't a mindful hobby. It's a high-stakes, soul, crushingly tedious production line of one. The ancient, repetitive labour doesn't bring you peace. It brings you a permanent, grinding ache in your shoulder and a crick in your neck from hunching over in the near-total darkness. Ah, the darkness. The peat fire gives off a soft warmth and dark red embers. Beyond that lies a profound, impenetrable blackness. The low doorway lets in a sliver of grey dusk, but that is fading fast. There are no windows. Windows are just holes for the monsters and the winter wind to get in. So you are working mostly by feel your eyes, straining in the gloom, play tricks on you. The shadows at the edge of the firelight writhe and dance. Is that just a pile of hides? Or is it something crouch? Is the faint rustling sound in the thatch just the wind? Or is it rats? The darkness in the roundhouse is absolute. It presses in on you. The circular space with no you are living, eating, sleeping, working, arguing and procreating in a single room with 3 generations of your family. Every sound is public. Every smell is shared. Your uncle is snoring over by the wall, a sound like a clogged drain. 2 of your younger cousins are having a whispered but vicious argument over who gets the last bit of dried apple. The baby, having filled its moss diaper, is now starting to wail, a piercing, relentless shriek that drills directly into your brain. No one can leave the room. There is nowhere to go. You just have to sit there and endure it. Someone farts. It's loud, wet, and unapologetic. A constant, inescapable bath in the sights, sounds, and smells of other people's biological functions. Let's talk about the long-standing peace. Where is it? Is it in the dull ache in your lower back from the hard floor? Is it in the maddening itch on your scalp that signals the relentless activity of your resident flea population? Is it in the gnawing emptiness in your stomach, the reminder that tonight's dinner was a thin, watery stew of barley and a few foraged roots, and that there won't be anything else until morning? Perhaps the peace comes from the security of these thick walls, the wattle but these walls won't stop a determined enemy. You live in a state of perpetual low-grade warfare. The next valley over is inhabited by the Cacciavaloni. They are, to put it mildly, not your friends. They are your competitors for land, for cattle, for resources, for slaves. Any night, they could sweep down on your settlement. The first thing you'd know about it would be the smell of your own roof burning. That magnificent thatch, so good at keeping the rain out, goes up like a Roman candle when set alight. The single, narrow doorway becomes a fatal choke point, a death trap. Your cozy, peaceful roundhouse becomes a kiln, and you are the pottery. So as you sit there, spinning your greasy thread, your ears are not just listening to the whir of the spindle. You are listening for other sounds. The bark of a dog that sounds wrong, a shout in the distance, the crack of a twig that doesn't belong to the night. The peace you feel is the fragile, temporary peace of an animal that has not yet scented a predator on the wind. It is not tranquility. It is the absence of immediate terror, and it is a fleeting state. The work continues. Is the rust-coloured sickness that took your neighbour's cow going to spread to your herd? Why has your eldest daughter's moon blood not come? Is she with child, or is she cursed? These are the thoughts that occupy your mind, a constant, grinding cycle of anxiety and superstition. The good news is, your life is incredibly simple. Your list of concerns is very short. Starvation, disease, violence, no retirement plan to consider. Your ambition is to see the next sunrise. You pull your rough wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. It smells like wet sheep, smoke, and you. Your fingers are stiff and sore. Your brother, silently mending a leather strap, his face grim in the faint firelight. This is it. This is the pinnacle of comfort, safety, and domestic bliss that your world has to offer. This smoke-filled, stinking, crowded, dark, damp hut. This is your sanctuary. This is your peace. It is the peace of having no other options. The peace of a life so relentlessly hard that the simple state of not being actively rained on or murdered counts as a victory. So, the next time you find yourself getting stressed out because your Wi-Fi is a little slow, or the barista put oat milk in your latte instead of almond, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to imagine the thick, greasy, smoky, dung-scented air of this roundhouse. Feel the damp chill seeping up from the dirt floor. Hear the baby crying, and the man coughing, and the rats skittering in the roof. Feel the endless mind-numbing repetition of twisting filthy wool into thread, knowing that your life depends on it. Hold that thought. Savor that ancient, long-standing peace.